I'm Shane Nyland, and my co host is Blake Musser. And these stories you're about to hear are from Weapons Company, 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines, 1st Marine Division, about the events surrounding and directly from the mouths of the people who were in Ramadi 2004. Great. Let's tell everybody who you are.
My name is William Webster. Back in 2004, I was PFC. I was in map 2 with you, Shane.
Yep.
So what's funny about all of this is I came out of SOI. I was supposed to actually, and a lot of my other guys were supposed to go to Hawaii.
Ah, yeah.
Oh, you're part of that group. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had orders coming out of SOI in North Carolina to go to Hawaii. They were supposed to change our orders, and we were supposed to go to you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they decided not to change the orders, and we ended up in Hawaii for I think like 2 or 3 weeks. Kind of like they were just holding us over, trying to figure out what was going on. And I think there was like a fight going on between the two. They were trying to keep us there so they didn't have to like spend the money to send us to you guys.
Yeah, for sure.
But in the end, obviously, you guys needed us more than what they were doing. They had no plans, from what I remember, of going to Iraq or anything like that. But I know you guys, from what I understand, were heavily depleted from all the prior everything, from the from all the Okies and everything, all of that sort. So you guys ended up pulling us over there, and we got to you guys in January.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember it was late as shit, and they were like, "Here's your room, take your shit, go." Like 0506, you're up, and we're running. So of course, we don't know fucking anybody. We're brand new there, don't know shit. The only person we met was the duties that night. We didn't meet you. We didn't meet nobody until the next morning.
Yeah.
And so we get there. We're putting our shit away. We go to sleep. We get up the next morning. And that's when you guys ended up, we all met you, and you're like, "Yep, we're leaving next month for Iraq." And we're like, I'm like, "What the fuck?" I'm like, "Wow, nice way to meet everybody. Hey, how you doing? By the way, you don't know anybody from a fucking hole in the wall, but next month we're going to Iraq." So I'm like, this 18-year-old kid fucking looking at the world going, "What the fuck did I just get myself into?" But honestly, it was probably one of the best things. Like, you guys were tough on us. You made sure we knew everything. Obviously, we're watching your six, you're watching us. You want to make sure you know what the fuck's going on, and we know what we're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, I got a lot of you guys to thank for that. Cohen, Jax, Johnson, Harden, you name you. I mean, you guys, we were down at the motor pool, down at the armory, breaking down weapons, learning all the Humvees, like anything and everything. Like, it was fast tracked and it moved really quick. And before we knew it, I think it was February 16th. We were out ready to go. March Air Force Base. We were getting ready to go, and I still had no clue as half of you guys were.
Yeah.
But I knew my life was in your hands, and your life was in my hands.
Yeah.
It was scary, but it became reality real quick.
I don't remember, but did you go to the March Air Force Base training? I don't feel like I remember you there, but did you go?
I think so. That was the one at the time Gunny Merarkey set up, right? And it was the
No, no, the
no.
March Air Force Base training was something official. They used the old abandoned officers housing. They kind of roped off a whole big block, couple blocks of area, and made it into a
Oh yes,
modified
yes,
town with people who acted like Iraqis. They were dressed in local dress and stuff.
yes. I was there. That was I remember doing. Yeah, I remember doing that. That was a good time. Um, I don't remember specifically when it was, but I remember I was there because I remember the housing and the streets and
Mhm.
all of that stuff. And um, but yeah, so February 16th, we were on the plane to go.
Yep.
Um, we ended up having a few delays going to the reserve base in New Jersey, I believe it was, for a few days.
Yeah.
A lot of guys seeing snow for the first time, like shell shocked by that one.
For you, it was going home.
Um, yeah, I was literally the next state down, so it wasn't anything for me. It was just, I remember in my head I was going, is this what every deployment's like? Do we have shit going on like this nonstop? Um, but there was that. Then I believe a few days in Jersey, and then we ended up in a few other places. I think Germany we landed in to refuel,
Yeah.
and then we ended up in Kuwait. We did our acclimation period there. Um, and then I remember I was in Sergeant Jordan's truck.
Okay.
Calais was my driver.
Hmm.
Emai was my driver, my gunner, sorry. And then I had an open seat. Um, and that's how we were on a convoy. That's how we crossed into Iraq.
Yeah.
Somehow we acquired a radio, had a CD player, and
Hmm.
crossing into Iraq, we played "Let the Bodies Hit the Floor" because
Nice.
you know how Jordan was.
Yeah.
Um, we ended up there, and then we stopped somewhere along the way at some random just like resupply, refueling, just like in the middle of nowhere. I don't
Hmm.
even know what it was. All of a sudden, we just stopped, and we were there. I believe overnight, and then we ended up. That was before we actually crossed into Iraq. We stopped there to resupply for fuel, I believe it was. And then we ended up crossing into Iraq and went into what was that, Hurricane Point.
Yeah. Yeah. Any impressions when you first drove any part of Iraq? Kind of actually after you crossed the line of departure and got to see what the place was. Any thoughts about it? I know you didn't come from a desert, so it might have been interesting as far as that goes.
um, not seeing much for miles
Yeah.
because you could literally just look for miles and miles and not see anything. I mean, there was you had the hills and the mountains in the background. But generally speaking, just seeing sand for miles and miles. Yeah, I that was a shock for me because I come from the city life where everywhere you look, you have giant ass buildings.
Right.
It's everywhere you look, you see something. Um, I remember, crossing into Iraq, and I just remember I was like, so are we going to be getting shot at from this point on, or like they going to give us like some leeway, like because you're a young kid, and even some of you guys, like, you don't know what to fucking expect. Like
Yep.
you're heading there. I mean, first of all, we had Humvees that you sneezed at and they fell apart.
Yeah.
For some of us, it was they didn't have any type of the upper armors that we ended up with later, or acquiring armor to put on, none of that stuff. I mean, I remember I think it was Captain Weiler took his doors off for part of the time because when we first got there, because the man was so freaking tall, he didn't fit in the front seat.
Yeah. Well, he also had a philosophy that the like having sort of an outward facing posture was either more threatening or less threatening. I don't know. He said both at one point in time. So
Well, I
Actually,
mean, you remember going over there. We weren't going over there for combat operations.
right,
If you remember, Bush sat there and said we were done with those. So we were going over there to
right,
win hearts and minds. Like,
right.
right.
okay, that's great. You always got to be ready for everything. And riding around, we had either no doors, we had those doors that came up to like your waist, and then we had the L-shaped ones. And I remember when we got those, I was sitting behind them. I'm like, this thin little metal I'm like, this is going to save my life. I'm like, and then realistically looking at it, I'm like, that's not going to save shit.
Yeah.
I'm like, they're going to shoot right through that thing, and everything behind it, which is me, is going to be dead. And looking back at it all now, we look at it. What the fuck were we thinking? Like these Humvees are gonna save us, and we're gonna be great. The gunners had no protection up there at first. Like we were, we were very, we were not prepared
Yeah.
by any stretch of the imaginations. Maybe tactics and stuff, but equipment wise, we got everybody's hand me downs and expected it just to how we always do. We'll make it work.
Well,
You
and
know,
that's and the early part. I mean, they had only started the IEDs, and so we didn't fully appreciate what was coming. No one, I mean, it didn't exist. But there was something that you said that made me have a half memory. And correct me if I'm wrong. Did we ship over our Humvees from our motor pool? Am I remembering that correctly?
Maybe some of them. I do
I
not.
don't think all of them.
Yeah.
I
But
have
if I remember correctly, I think we did bring some of them over there with us.
Yeah.
But we had to keep some in the rear for whoever was still in the rear doing
I mean, yeah,
whatever the hell they were
training and
doing.
driving, and yeah, you still have to do stuff back in
Yeah,
Camp Pendleton.
Yeah,
yeah. I have
so
I
we
have
we
this.
didn't bring all of it.
I have a weird memory of I possibly was even a part of driving it down to get them shipped over. But that also might be a half memory coming from Okinawa when we
So
loaded them on too.
we
And
did
so
do
like
that in
it's a
Oki.
like
Yeah.
you know, like
Yeah.
like the ones that were on Hanson to go on to the Essex, and so that
Yeah.
might be the memory that I'm having. So anyways, sorry
No,
to
I I
take a
I
tangent there.
do I do believe we did have a few working parties or whatever to bring some Humvees from Pendleton um to wherever to ship them off. But again, I don't think it was everything. I think they kept some in the rear for people that had to do all the driving and everything else, learn how
Yeah,
to drive and such of that. Um, but yeah, it was, learning you're going to Iraq is one thing. And then when you're in Iraq is another thing. Cause you think, you think you have an idea, especially from listening to people that might have been there prior. Um, but what the initial invasion to what we went through was completely different if you look at it.
Oh, for sure.
100%.
Like I said, we were going over there to win hearts and minds. They didn't give a shit about what we wanted. They wanted us out. They wanted us gone.
Yeah.
You went in, you shook hands with people that were 10 seconds later trying to shoot you in the back. They'd act like your best friend. Some of them knew how to speak pretty good English. They'd bullshit with you or whatever. And then down the road, they're the ones trying to shoot you in the back. So it was like, and you're not going over there fighting guys that are in uniforms. We're all uniformed. We're all in the same stuff. They're wearing whatever the hell, whenever, doing whatever they wanted. So it was, when you're learning about, they're going to put IEDs in this and that and everything else, your eyes lock on to certain things, especially with all the garbage as you're driving around. They didn't use a lot of the crap that they said back when you're learning about all that.
Yeah.
They were, and I hate saying this because a lot of us, I think, went over there thinking they were stupid. And, thinking we could just go over there and basically clean house, and it was our place to just run over everything and do what we wanted. And they were not stupid by any stretch of the imagination. Especially you had guys coming in from different countries that were very well trained, that were training the Iraqis, and training everybody to basically do what they did and counteract everything we did. Every time we came up with tactics, they came up with something that basically outdid what we did, and we had to redo our tactics.
Yep. Yeah, it was a big cat and mouse game for sure. There was always a push and pull between you and the enemy. I think that's probably true of every war, I'd imagine. But yeah, especially in this, since it was not a like standard line up online and shoot at each other type thing, fight over territory.
Yeah, I think I've heard Musser a few times. We were going over there and kind of like trying to figure out how things worked, what didn't. We didn't have like the ones before us to realistically tell us,
right,
this worked, that worked, don't do this, don't do that. Like, it was like kind of, we went over there and it was like, all right, let's start figuring out how to do things, what works. Let's see where we can do this, that, and whatever tactics might work. And they might, you had tactics work for about a month or two and then had to change them up because they figured them out.
Right.
Well, I mean, you had several. I mean, that you bring up a couple. I mean, the point you're making is well taken. I mean, I can't remember how many times our ROEs changed while we were over there.
Yep.
And that had to do with that we had a changing landscape of expectation. Also, we, as you noted, when we first went over, we were doing SASO operations. Well, that evolved after we started seeing the insurgency, as you mentioned, other people coming over, and then our our fairly failed attempt at handing over power back. No, all I was saying is that our ROEs changed a bunch, and then our mission changed a lot too because of when the insurgency came in, and then finally another big change was when we did try to hand power over to the Iraqis in June, end of June. And that was just an abysmal. That was a huge failure on our part, the coalition's part. That then once again changed our mission, and we didn't have other than keep Ramadi quelled. There wasn't strong. It's not easy to plan an quote unquote attack if you don't know what your mission is. Other than we were trying to snatch up some bad guys,
right? And we've said this before, but it was also a ever-changing moment in Marine Corps at that time, right?
Oh yeah.
All the gear was changing, the uniforms had changed, many of the weapon systems had changed with the exception of the 50 cal, which will never change apparently for 150 years. But every other yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, the 50 doesn't have to change, it's perfect. But every other gun system has changed. All the optics were changing. All of the radios were changing. The Humvees got jettisoned right after that. The airplane that we flew over on literally got decommissioned 18 months later. Like there's just you can point in any direction and it was just a time where every part of the military was revamping itself for a new
We
kind of
were,
thing.
I feel like we were like a learning point for a lot of that went
Sure.
over there.
Hmm.
And they were like, okay, this doesn't work, that doesn't work, change this, change that. Because like you said, we were either before, while we were there, or afterwards, a lot of stuff was coming and going.
Correct. Yeah.
And it
Well,
was like, here, take this, here, take that. Like, I went over there with iron sights, and then they gave us
The ACOGs.
what was it, the RCOs or ACOGs.
ACOGs.
And it
Yeah.
was like, hey, now you gotta go, go over to this base and go you know, go test them and make sure they're good and everything. And it's like,
Mhm.
okay, well, what's wrong with our iron sights? I was doing just fine with that. Like, I know I can't see as far as with an ACOG or whatever, but
Yeah.
I was all right.
Yeah.
It was weird because, like I said, me being fresh into the fleet, I'm like, is this how this goes for every deployment? Like,
Mhm.
it was weird, but like, I definitely gotta say, um, this was probably the best deployment I had in the whole 10 years I was in.
Nice.
Um, not saying when I was with other guys in 2-4 or 2-5, because I went back to Iraq. After that, I went to Afghanistan with 2-5 and everything. But this definitely was like the camaraderie and everything was by far the best deployment that I ever had. We had a lot of fun. We had a lot of good times. We had our bad times. Um, but overall, the deployment to Ramadi, after, getting to know you guys finally, it was a good
Uh-huh.
time, and I'm glad that I got, sounds weird to say, but I'm glad I got the opportunity.
Right.
And and being the new guy coming in and getting to do what my MOS actually was,
Hmm.
you know, you can't beat that.
Right. Well, while you're talking about it, do you remember any sort of first missions, first instances where you were kind of learning about the team and you were doing stuff, or anything that stands out sort of in the early missions?
Um, I remember a lot of going out, and as soon as we'd go out the gate, like, I remember Sergeant Jordan would look back and he'd look at all of us and be like, "We're gonna be fine." You guys, and me and Calais were new.
Hmm.
Emai was there. He was a lance corporal at the time. Me and Calais were both PFCs. I don't know if Calais came in before me or after me. I'm not sure. Or we came in around the same time.
I would say maybe a week before,
Um,
not long before.
yeah, there wasn't much before. Calais was probably and this is just me saying this.
Hmm.
I loved him as a driver.
Hmm.
He was, I say he was the best driver. But that's just me because he was my driver.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
Haradsky has threatened my life, so anytime that's said, I now have to say he was the best driver, or else he's going to murder me. So,
well, I mean, yeah, you you had Radsky, you had Homewood.
we,
You had some good drivers.
dude, I have said this across weapons company, not even just our platoon, across weapons company. The drivers made the deployment. There is
Absolutely.
a million reasons why everybody should have died from a simple car accident, and somehow
Mhm.
they navigated everything: explosions,
Well,
bullets, gunfire,
yep.
driving through
shitty
crazy traffic.
NVGs.
Yeah, garbage
Oh God.
optics, all of it. Yeah.
Well, if you think about it, you're not trained to drive literally on top of each other's
Mhm.
tire tracks.
Right.
And how many times we'd be going out and it's like, stay in his tire tracks in front of you. Meanwhile, you have, a good distance between you two.
Yeah.
I give those guys, hands down, all of our drivers, I give tons of credit because you could have at any given time hit anything. The things that they saw, the way they had to drive at times, it hands down, they were probably the best thing that we had because we should have been dead a million times over, honestly.
Yeah.
A lot of I've heard you guys say it, a lot of IEDs blew up in between us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the one thing that they were shitty at. They would hit that button or whatever and it would blow up right in between the trucks.
Thank God they never figured out that timing.
Oh God. There would be a lot less of us left if they actually did. There were times they got lucky with them. I remember one of the first times hearing gunshots off in the distance, and I'm like, oh shit! I'm like, this is real. And then like one of the first times you hear an IED blow up, and you're like, what the? Like you're looking around, going, what the fuck was that? And then you realize you see the big puff of smoke somewhere in the distance, and you're like, I think that was meant for us.
Yeah.
Do you remember the first time that you got engaged? Do you remember whether it was an IED where you were shooting back or?
So, unfortunately, what the first time I remember was April 4th.
Okay.
April 4th was not, we were out across from I think it was like a 3 or 4 story building at like almost midnight.
Yeah.
Around there, maybe a little before. I forgot why we were out there, but I remember we were out there, and so they had like a courtyard. I don't know why, but so we had our truck next to the wall, and Imai was the gunner at the time. So I stayed with him at the truck. Calais and Jordan, I don't know where they went, but they weren't around at this point. I think they went into one of the buildings with a few other guys. Yeah. And Lieutenant Stevens had his truck, if I remember correct, right across from this building. And it was almost under a freaking light. Like they were just dead center under this goddamn light for some reason. And I remember, I remember, Morris was the gunner. Cohen was
of the third truck. Because you guys had 3 trucks. We were split section at that time.
Yeah. Cohen was with the truck, and they went to go change out. And I was ducked under. Me and Imai were having like a conversation or whatever. We were just bullshitting because there was nothing going on. We were watching everything. And all of a sudden I remember hearing a huge explosion. And I remember when I got up and I looked around the corner, I saw a bunch of smoke, and I saw at the time what I thought was like pavement and rocks all blown up on the ground. I didn't realize at the time that they had shot an RPG and they hit Morris and Cohen.
Yeah.
That was the first time I remember. I don't remember getting engaged before that, maybe a few pop shots. But I remember after that, because like I said, I don't remember where Calais was. He wasn't around at the time. So they yelled over to us to pull the truck up to basically put it in front to shield for Morris and Cohen. And I remember when I got over there, and this will haunt me forever, because I remember when I got over there, what I thought was all the debris and rocks and everything was actually Morris laying on the ground. He took the brunt of the RPG.
Yep.
And it was hard seeing, because I've never seen anything like that. And I didn't know, like, we're all like, what the hell? And I remember almost like his if I remember correct, his right side was torn up.
Mm-hmm.
He was in extremely bad shape. And I remember, I think it was Bundesen. I think it was, that was the one that was trying to do whatever he could at the time. And, they basically told me to kind of hold his insides in. And then with all that going on, there was like, they were taking pop shots at us still. So we ended up getting him into our truck. We put him on a litter and got him into the truck. And again, you got to remember, it's like midnight. So they look at me and they're like, get in a truck and drive. And I'm like, the fuck? I'm like, me? You want me to drive? I was like, okay, I've never driven one of these before. Sure. Don't go with lights, go with NVGs. I was like, what the fuck? I'm like, yeah, this is getting better and better by the minute. So at some point they realized I couldn't fucking drive this thing with the NVG, so they were like, turn the fucking lights on and just gun it. So we turned the lights on. I remember while heading to combat outpost, because that's the closest we were.
Yeah.
I remember getting there. I remember on the way there, I think it was Bundy and them. There was a few in the back trying to do whatever they could, just to keep him alive, to bring him, to get him on the bird and to I think it was Germany. He was in bad shape. I remember I looked back at one point and he was facing towards me. And I remember, when somebody's in that kind of shape, you don't know what's going on.
Sure.
So I remember looking back and he was making some like noises like I've never heard a person make in my life. And it scared the living shit out of me. When I remembered, just, what can you do at that point? Like, I remember just yelling back and I'm like, you're going to be fine. We're getting you to where you can get the help you need. And again, I don't know if what he was hearing or if he was coherent. I don't know. I don't know, like I said, what state you're in at that point.
Sure.
So I remember getting to combat outpost and they all start jumping out. I jump out and I forgot to put the fucking truck in park. So the fucking truck starts rolling.
It's your first time driving.
Out.
So
yeah. And I remember, I want to say Sergeant Harden was there. He was one of them, but I'm not for sure. I don't remember exactly who was there. But I remember somebody yelling and going, get back in the fucking truck and put it in park. And I'm like, because at that point I'm getting out of the truck. I'm like, where's the fucking truck going? And I'm like, oh shit, I forgot to put it in park. So I jump in and, I put it in park, and they didn't let all of us who was there. They didn't let all of us in. They only let who needed to go in, bring Morris in, and then they took it from there. And I just remember from that point on, I was like, oh shit, this is real. Like, this is not like make believe anymore. It's not a game. This is real life. People are going to get hurt and people are going to die. And that's more or less where I made peace with everything. And once you make peace that you could die in a foreign land, it becomes a little more like you kind of get a sense of like you calm down a little bit, because it's weird to say, but it calmed me down knowing that, like at any given point we cross out of Hurricane Point, that could be the last time you are going out, coming back, whatever. It was scary. And one of the things that and I don't like, like I'm sitting here talking with you guys about this. I don't like talking about this. I haven't in a long time. When I was married, well, I'm married now, but my ex-wife, she didn't get it. You could talk, I could talk to her, but she didn't get it. She didn't know what we went through. She had her own side of it to deal with, having our baby and being home, wondering what's going on, times like that, not being able to talk to us for days on end, whatever. And now, being married and everything again, you can't come out and talk to people about it because they just don't get it. And
Agreed.
when you said you wanted to start this podcast, I was probably one of the first ones in the group chat, Shane, that was like, this is a great idea. It's almost like a therapy session for some of us, because I know you've talked to a few, Latham and them.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, I don't talk about this. This will be the only time, and then I'm done.
It's most. I think we're probably getting close to 40 interviews, probably close to, with yours. I think we're at 38, 39, 40, somewhere around there. I don't know. I haven't counted. But of those, I would imagine, I think it's 30 or 35 have probably all said that I will talk about this now, and I probably won't talk about it much. There's only one or two who are like, yeah, I talk about this all the time. Not a big deal. It's very rare.
Like that. There's no sense in talking to people about it that don't know about it,
Mm-hmm.
and have never been through things that we've done or seen. Because they act like they understand it, but they don't, and they never will.
Sure.
It's a different place than, what people think they know about what we've went through. And
you brought up one of those really key ones, with that resigned moment, that moment that you make that transition of being like, it is what it is, but it's not suicidal, right? It's not hopeless or helpless, but it's like this, unless you've actually done that, is so you can't explain. There's not language to explain it, because it's something that literally is an emotional, physical thing that happens, to your point, where it's like, I can now relax.
Yes.
Which sounds crazy,
right?
But I completely identify with what you're talking about, that relaxed moment of being like, okay, well, now I'm going to, I'm not worried about getting hurt. I'm not worried about dying. It's it is what it is, and mission
Well,
accomplishment.
Because think about it. When you go over there, it's keep everybody alive. So, and come home in one piece. So you're kind of tensed up trying to be overly cautious and everything else. Being overly cautious can get you in some shit too.
Absolutely.
So once April 4th happened, and then April 6th happened, and I had a lot of guys that I went to SOI and boot camp with that were either injured or lost their lives April 6th too and April 7th.
Yeah.
That were in I believe it was Golf Company, Fox Company, whatever. I had a lot of guys that were line company that went to those companies that were in all of that shit that either got killed or hurt. So those 2 days definitely hit very hard because I knew a lot of those guys. I went through SOI and boot camp with a lot of those guys. April 4th will forever be in my mind, number one, because we lost Morse. Morse was a great guy. He was he came in before me. Him, Newmeyer, all of them, they taught me a lot of stuff.
It's funny. He was about a month your senior, not significantly so, but yeah, he was in before you.
Still a good guy.
Absolutely.
The thing with April 4th that gets me more than anything is me and Morris, we got along, but we didn't get along. And a few hours before we actually went out, me and him got into some stupid argument about something. And it carries with me. I don't remember what it was. It was probably something absolutely stupid that, we at the time thought was something, but it wasn't. And now I carry it with me because I can't ever say, apologize or anything for that. So it kind of, it gets at me at times. But that and April 6th were definitely the two that were like, holy shit, this is real. And I just lost somebody in my platoon and a whole bunch of guys that I went to boot camp and SOI with that, I knew for 3, 4, 5, 6 months already. And now they're all gone.
Yeah.
And that's like I said, once all of that. And then I had that, holy shit, this is real. And, you could be dead at any point in time. Like even when we were in Hurricane Point, when we got to Hurricane Point, I had one of the top bunks.
Yeah.
You had bunk beds. I remember laying there and I'm looking up going, if they shoot anything and it drops, that cloth is supposed to protect us. I go, I'm dead right off the bat. Like if something hits us square.
I'm actually
I
surprised
remember
that no one actually got hurt on base. Like we've had
Not
small
significantly.
injuries.
Yeah, not significantly.
Small injuries, but it is
Yep.
absolutely astonishing.
Yep.
We didn't have any significant casualties, considering the number of times we got mortared and rocketed.
Yep.
I mean, they hit that. They hit that one con Xbox and set it on fire.
Yeah.
That's as close. I mean, they got close, but there was nothing crazy with any of that. I think I remember if weren't they like it was like our 6 a.m. wake up call almost every fucking day. They were shooting mortars right across the river at us, right into the base.
Yep. It was the only reason why you knew it was some kind of Islamic holiday or some kind of national holiday meant that our 6 a.m. wake up didn't happen. And that was like 6 times or whatever. It wasn't very many times, but we were like, oh shit, the wait a minute, the incoming fire is late. And it would be
Yep.
late, right? They'd go to prayer early morning and be at mosque. And then when they would let out, then they would fire the mortars.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was.
Uh-huh.
I remember when that started, and I'm like, "What the fuck is this?" And it started happening every day, and I'm like, "All right, well,
Yeah.
here's our 6 a.m. wake up." And you'd hear it start going, and you're like, "Okay, it must be 6."
Yep.
And they lob a few, and then they disappear with their makeshift mortar tubes.
Yeah.
Who found those?
Yeah.
We
got
captured
'em.
some. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got a really cool
did you?
pic.
Mhm.
I got a really cool picture of the one that they made with angle
Yeah.
iron and everything.
Yeah,
It was extremely ingenious what they had made.
they had like three angle iron to shoot them off, right?
Correct. And
Yeah.
it was several pieces of angle iron, but there was 3 that they had used to hold the rockets,
Mhm.
and then they had a thumb screw to adjust for the elevation, and then they just ran. It was like speaker wire that they had run to a battery
Mhm.
to
To touch
make
off the launch motors. Yeah.
touch off the launch
See?
motors.
That speaks to they weren't stupid.
No.
Even the lowest level of the ranks there were not stupid. They would put stuff together, and when you found it, you'd look at it and be like, "What the hell is this?" But they made it work.
They got us.
They did.
Well, I'm going to reel you back to April 4th just for a half a second, not to twist the screws in any way, but, and again, not to be your therapist either, but to give you a little bit of a sense of what might have happened on April 4th, and also the significance of it for our company. He was the first weapons company casualty. Never mind that he was a great guy, and I agree. I thought he was like a little brother to me. At least partially. As far as your never getting to apologize, I now 22 years later deal with a lot of trauma as part of my career. And one of the last things to go when people are going into shock and sort of swirling the drain is your sense of hearing. Your sense of vision can go, your sense of touch can go. They may not even be able to speak, but often your sense of hearing is one of the last things to go. That's just because of the way your brain is physiologically built. So, probably one of the last things he heard before he went into the surgical suite or the medical suite. And they did they had given him some morphine and some stuff when they got in there, and he was out. By the time I saw him, because I came in right after you pulled in and they took him into Cricard's area where he was doing the medical stabilization.
Yeah.
He was already in there. So basically, right before then, when you were telling him he was going to be all right and you were getting him evac'd, you were probably the last words of comfort he ever heard. Maybe you never thought about that, but
no, because like I said, you don't know what's like. Me being a 19-year-old kid, I didn't know what state, would he actually be in.
Yeah.
It was
he was
a shock seeing what, like, from what I understand, if this is correct, he got resuscitated like 3 or 4 times on the way from combat outpost to Germany, and they resuscitated him again in Germany, and that's where he ended up passing away, I believe.
I don't know if he ever made it to Germany, but maybe. I know that he was breathing on his own when he left combat outpost. And being able to breathe on your own at least means that there was basilar function still in place. And so he was still maintaining his own airway and stable enough to get loaded on the bird. So
I remember we went back to from combat outpost. Yeah, we ended up having to have Lieutenant Stevens' truck towed.
Yep.
He ended up jumping in with us. He took the back seat. But I remember going back to not combat outpost, going from combat outpost to Hurricane Point, and we were all kind of just sitting there. Nobody wanted to go to sleep. Nobody, we wanted to know what was going on. And I remember Staff Sergeant Coleman coming in, and I remember him telling us that he had passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And from that point, it was just like nobody really knew what to do, and when you have those things go on, we didn't have any grieving time. There was no downtime. It was okay. Well, now here's the next mission for tomorrow morning or whatever. So it was like, yes, that happened. We need to now resituate and get everything going again. And it's like, how do you, like, just you can't just flip the switch and act like it never happened.
Right.
It's one of the toughest things to deal with ever. And we're supposed to be these big bad men that the enemy think we kill our firstborn and blah blah and all this, whatever the hell they say about us.
Yeah.
And what do you do after that?
Well, you talk about a couple of things that we learned from that moment that we didn't realize. First and foremost, what do you do when you don't have a driver for your Humvee? We actually did talk about that after that moment. And we did say that from then on, sort of our protocol was everybody should know how to push a gas pedal because almost everybody knows how to drive a car, but that we wouldn't do anything fancy, right? No more NVGs, no more weirdness, right? Whatever. If somebody has to drive, they just drive, and you don't take you take the most direct route, even if it's the worst route, no left and right turns. So me and Randall and Lieutenant Stevens had that conversation afterwards. The second thing is that you were in a closed top, what do they call the shellback Humvee or whatever? A million different hatchback Humvee or whatever they call them. They're not made to load a litter in the back. They're definitely not made to load a litter in the back and have people work on a human body. And so
there was not a lot of room. We had, if I remember correct, everything was open in the back. The litter was actually hanging out the back.
Yeah.
And we were, well, not me, I was obviously driving, but they were trying to hold on to the litter as they were doing whatever they could do.
Yep.
So there wasn't many people in the back.
Nope. I think it was just Bundy and whoever was with you in the front seat.
Yeah, we learned a lot from that. Right. I mean, it didn't, you're not going out. I mean, you can go out expecting to, maybe get into a firefight or whatever.
Right.
But you're never going out expecting to lose somebody, expecting to have this huge litter sitting in the back, and you're trying to hold it in as you're racing down Michigan to get to from where you were to combat outpost.
Yeah.
That's
also why, and I don't know if you remember this, but the next time that we had that situation was with the engineers, and when they got wounded
on the
dam, yeah, and we loaded one of them in one of those shellback Humvees. We actually opened the back two doors and slid them in sideways, and we had a strap, and we used the strap to hold the doors shut, which held the litter in place instead of loading them in the back. That was we had made that SOP from learning from that particular mistake, just shit you're learning on the fly.
Yeah, again, that like I said, that was, you don't go over half of this stuff. It's
we never thought about it.
Stuff that just happens as you're going.
Yep.
And it's, now all of a sudden your brain has to start flying off the handle to figure out what the fuck do we do to get out of this situation.
Yeah.
The
last thing that we learned from that particular incident, because that was the first weapons company casualty, I went over and talked to Staff Sergeant Coleman, and neither me nor Randall had a good answer for what was the answer. But we said, what do we do about grieving? What do we do about, whatever? And they're like, if anybody wants to talk to the chaplain, they can. Otherwise, you're going right back out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, at the time, I remember thinking, man, that's brutal. Like, it's fine. I'm good with it. But that seems rough and aggressive.
Yes.
That ended up being Marine Corps policy. that when there was a significant casualty event, you debriefed, you took the lessons out of it, and you gave them a couple hours to talk about it, feel your feelings, think your thoughts, and then you go right back to work. There was no extended grieving period.
Well, a lot of us, I mean, because it was early morning, I think a lot of us ended up, from the adrenaline, from everything that happened, a lot of us just ended up passing out.
Yeah.
I don't remember what was for the next morning for us,
We
but
went out.
I remember a lot of us just passing out,
Yeah.
and we started waking up little by little. And I remember looking around going, was that a dream? Like, was that like, it was just, it was so, like, I wanted to wake up and hope it was a dream,
Yep.
you know, but then when you wake up and you see everybody still, like, half of us fell asleep still in what we went out in.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was a tough time. I mean, you know, later down the road, you know, think about with IEDs, later down the road, we got hit by IEDs. It was, are you okay? Can you go back out? Later down the road, it was, they got time to get checked out and everything.
Yeah, we
you know,
definitely
as
we
deployment
didn't have
went
that.
on.
We didn't have
No,
that.
it was with everything with us was, are you okay? Good. Get back on the truck. Let's go. You know, next mission up.
Literally, and you mentioned it, we kind of passed over it, but Miranda and Cohen both took RPG shrapnel, significant shrapnel, and had significant wounds. They were
Didn't Cohen leave and then came back?
He didn't leave from that. He left later. No, he left later from a broken.
I remember he left later.
Yeah, he left later from a broken jaw.
Yes, I remember that.
He did skip the afternoon mission the next day, I think. I don't know, I'll have to ask him, but that was my memory. But Miranda went right back out on mission the next day. There was no.
Well, that was a tough son of a bitch. Miranda was
Yeah.
He's built like a fucking. He's a tough son of a bitch.
Yeah.
If you like what you've heard, this is a multi-part episode. Make sure you listen to the rest of the story. Okay.